This marriage is over, Sarah. The court will see every lie you've told, every secret you've tried to hide. Those were Davis's last words before sliding a folder of damning evidence across the table. Sarah thought her affair would remain hidden. She thought she could walk away untouched. But Davis had already built a case so airtight, it would strip her of everything she held dear. What came next will make you question whether betrayal is ever worth the risk. Viewers, let me ask you, if your spouse's phone lit up beside you one morning with the message, "Hope our plans for the weekend still stands. See you soon," and the message wasn't from anyone you knew, would you ignore it? Or would you start questioning everything you thought you knew about your marriage? That's the question Davis silently wrestled with on a Tuesday morning, as sunlight crawled through the blinds of his modest suburban home. To the outside world, Davis and Sarah were the portrait of a perfect young couple. Married for 7 years, parents of 3 lively children, their home carried the kind of laughter that made neighbors smile and envy linger on the edges of conversations. Davis was not a rich man, but he was a steady one. He worked long hours at a construction firm in the city, his hands rough with effort, but his heart soft with devotion to his wife and children. Every paycheck, no matter how modest, went first to bills, then to food, then to the tiny joys he could afford for his family. In Sarah, he thought he had found his safe harbor, the one person who would never betray him. But trust, like glass, can shatter with a single crack. That morning, as Sarah showered behind the locked bathroom door, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Davis wasn't in the habit of snooping. In fact, he prided himself on respecting boundaries. But when the screen lit up, he couldn't unsee what it showed. "Sandra, hope our plans for the weekend still stands. See you soon." The words sliced into him like a blade. His breath caught. His chest tightened. He stared, his mind racing. Who was Sandra? And what kind of plans were being made without him knowing? His hands, trembling, reached for the phone. He told himself he would just glance, just confirm. With a swipe, he unlocked it. But when he opened the chat, the thread was blank. Every message gone. Not a trace, not a clue. As if the words he had seen were a ghost. At that very moment, Sarah emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, humming softly to herself. Her hair dripped water onto the tiled floor. Her smile was effortless. She kissed him casually, as though nothing in the world was wrong. Davis placed the phone back as quickly as he had picked it up, his expression carefully composed. He kissed her forehead, said goodbye to the kids, and walked out the door. But inside him, something had shifted. All day at work, he replayed the moment like a broken record. The glowing words on the phone, the blank message thread, the humming tune as Sarah stepped out of the shower. His mind became a battlefield where trust clashed violently with suspicion. He told himself it could be nothing. Maybe a friend, maybe a mistake. But why delete the conversation? Why hide it? That night, as Sarah slept peacefully beside him, Davis lay awake staring at the ceiling, the weight of doubt pressing on his chest. He didn't know it yet, but that single message would become the spark that ignited the darkest storm of his life. The storm was coming. The next morning, Davis tried to shake it off. He kissed his kids goodbye, sipped his coffee, and told himself he was overthinking. People delete messages all the time, right? Maybe it was private, maybe it was nothing. But the seed of suspicion, once planted, does not stop growing. It takes root, spreading like ivy across the mind. Every smile Sarah gave him in the following days felt like a mask. Every phone call she stepped outside to take, every late-night text that lit up her screen, suddenly it all carried a hidden weight. Davis would find himself staring at her when she wasn't looking, searching her eyes for signs of guilt. But Sarah, calm and composed, never betrayed a single crack. One Thursday evening, Davis came home earlier than usual. Sarah wasn't in the living room, nor was she in the kitchen. He climbed the stairs quietly and heard her voice, soft, secretive. She was on the phone in their bedroom. "Of course, yes, I'll be there. Don't worry, no one knows." Silence. then a small laugh. Davis froze outside the door, every word etching itself into his bones. His hand hovered near the doorknob, but he couldn't bring himself to push it open. Instead, he backed away, his heart pounding. By the time Sarah stepped out a few minutes later, wearing her usual smile, Davis was downstairs pretending to watch television. That night, lying in bed with her beside him, he knew he couldn't ignore it any longer. But confronting her outright, that felt dangerous. What if he was wrong? What if he shattered their marriage over paranoia? So he turned to someone else. The following week, during his lunch break, Davis sat in his car staring at a business card he'd taken from a bulletin board at the cafe near his office. It read, Andrew Price, Private Investigations, Discreet, Confidential. His fingers tapped against the steering wheel as he weighed the cost. Hiring an investigator would mean dipping into their savings, the money set aside for their children's school fees, for emergencies, for their fragile security as a family. But what was the price of peace of mind? The decision, once made, was irreversible. That afternoon, Davis called the number. Andrew Price's voice was calm, measured, the kind of tone that made you feel you weren't alone. They agreed to meet in a quiet diner on the edge of town. When Davis arrived, Andrew was already there, mid-40s, salt and pepper hair, sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You're not the first man to sit in that chair," Andrew said after hearing Davis's story, "and you won't be the last. But before we proceed, you need to be certain you want the truth, because once you see it, there's no going back." Davis stared into his coffee, his hands clenched tight around the cup. "I want to know. Whatever it costs me, I need to know." Andrew nodded slowly, sliding a small notebook across the table. "Then let's begin." It was in that moment, in that dimly lit diner, that Davis crossed an invisible line. The man who had once trusted blindly now entered the world of shadows, where secrets lurked, and the truth, once uncovered, could never be undone. The trap had been set. All that was left was to wait. The first week of surveillance was uneventful. Andrew reported back to Davis with nothing but ordinary details. Sarah picked the kids up from school, went grocery shopping, visited her sister, and came home in time to make dinner. On paper, she was the perfect mother and wife. But Davis knew better. He couldn't forget that message. He couldn't erase the sound of her secretive laugh on the phone upstairs. On the 7th day, Andrew called him late at night. "We've got something. You need to see this." The next afternoon, Davis drove to Andrew's office, his palms slick against the steering wheel. Andrew had a manila folder waiting for him. Inside were photographs. The first showed Sarah walking into a hotel downtown, her hair styled, her dress not the one Davis had seen her leave the house in that morning. The second showed her sitting at a table across from a man Davis had never seen before. Tall, sharp suit, clean-shaven jaw. He was leaning across the table, his hand brushing Sarah's fingers. The third made Davis's stomach drop. Sarah leaving the hotel hours later with the same man, their shoulders brushing, their smiles too intimate to be mistaken. For a moment, Davis couldn't breathe. The walls of the office seemed to close in around him. His wife, his Sarah, the mother of his children, laughing in the arms of a stranger. Andrew's voice cut through the fog. "His name is Daniel Parker, mid-30s, works in finance downtown. Married once, divorced 5 years ago. No kids. I've got his address, his work history, even his license plate. He's clean on paper, but this..." Andrew tapped the photo of Sarah and Daniel together. "This isn't just lunch between friends. She's hiding it from you for a reason." Davis's hands trembled as he shuffled through the photos again. Each one was a knife. Each one confirmed his worst fear. That evening, he came home to Sarah humming in the kitchen, the smell of pasta filling the air. She greeted him with a smile, kissed his cheek, asked about his day, as if nothing in the world had changed. And maybe for her, nothing had. But for Davis, everything was different now. He sat at the table nodding at the right moments, laughing at the children's stories, pretending his world wasn't collapsing. But his mind burned with the images Andrew had shown him. That night, while Sarah slept peacefully at his side, Davis lay awake staring into the darkness. He could almost hear Daniel's laugh, see Sarah's smile that wasn't meant for him. And then, something inside him hardened. He would not confront her. Not yet. Confrontation gave power away. What Sarah didn't know was that he already knew. He would wait. He would plan. And when the moment came, she wouldn't see it coming. For the first time in his life, Davis felt the cold burn of vengeance take root. The faithful husband was gone. What remained was a man quietly sharpening the blade of betrayal into his own weapon. The days that followed were torture. Davis became an actor in his own home, playing the role of a husband who knew nothing, while his heart twisted with every glance at Sarah. He laughed when he had to, tucked the children into bed and kissed Sarah goodnight. But behind the mask he was studying her. Every word she spoke, every sudden trip to the grocery store, every phone call that ended the moment he walked into a room. It all fed his growing suspicion. Sarah was careful. Too careful. Andrew continued tailing her, sending Davis reports that painted a picture darker than he'd imagined. Sarah and Daniel weren't just meeting at hotels. They had been spotted dining at restaurants on the other side of town, strolling together in quiet parks, even shopping at boutiques. She wasn't slipping away for quick rendezvous. She was building another life, piece by piece, right under Davis's nose. And yet, at home, she was flawless. She helped their daughter with her homework, kissed their youngest goodnight, sat at the dinner table as if she were nothing but devoted. Davis's rage simmered beneath the surface, but anger was not his only companion. Grief haunted him like a shadow. He remembered their wedding day, Sarah's vows trembling with emotion. He remembered the birth of their first child, the tears they both shed when they held him for the first time. He remembered the nights they dreamed of a future together, promising they would face every storm as one. Was it all a lie? Or had something changed in her heart that he could never undo? Andrew's investigation soon uncovered more. Daniel wasn't just Sarah's lover. He was also the Sandra in her phone. She had hidden his name beneath a woman's contact to keep suspicion away. Every secret text, every whispered call, every weekend visit to her cousin's house had really been a carefully crafted alibi. Andrew laid out the truth in cold detail. She's not just being careless, Davis. She's being strategic. People who hide like this, they don't stop on their own. They only stop when they're caught. The words pierced Davis deeper than he expected. That night, Davis sat in his car outside their house, staring at the home he had built for his family. Inside were his 3 children, asleep in their beds. Inside was Sarah, the woman who once promised to honor and cherish him. Inside was a life he had sacrificed everything for, now crumbling. For a fleeting moment, he considered confrontation. He imagined storming into the house, demanding answers, forcing Sarah to confess. But then he pictured her denying it, turning the blame back on him, weaving another web of lies. No, that wasn't enough. She had betrayed him in silence. He would destroy her with silence. From that night on, Davis stopped being a man searching for the truth. He had the truth. Now, he was a man preparing for the reckoning. And Sarah, blissfully unaware, continued to walk the edge of her own downfall. Davis's silence became his greatest weapon. Outwardly, nothing had changed. He went to work, came home, played with his children, kissed Sarah on the cheek when she handed him his dinner plate. But beneath that calm exterior, he was constructing a plan with the precision of a man who knew patience was more powerful than rage. He started with the finances. Quietly, discreetly, Davis opened a separate bank account under his name only. Every bonus check, every small side job he took after hours, every bit of spare cash he could gather went into that account. Sarah never noticed. Why would she? She still believed she had him wrapped in trust. Next, Davis met with a lawyer. He told Andrew nothing of this part. Some secrets even an investigator didn't need to know. The lawyer listened carefully, reviewed the photos, the phone records Andrew had collected, and gave Davis the one thing he needed most: leverage. With this, the lawyer said, tapping the folder of evidence, you can secure custody. The court will not look kindly on a mother endangering the stability of her children for an affair. Custody. The word gave Davis both hope and fire. He wasn't just planning to confront Sarah. He was planning to take back control of everything she thought she could steal from him. Meanwhile, Sarah's behavior grew bolder. One Friday evening, she told Davis she had a late-night meeting with a community group. Davis kissed her forehead and told her to drive safe. An hour later, Andrew sent Davis a photo of Sarah stepping into Daniel's car, her dress far too glamorous for any community meeting. She returned home past midnight, slipping into bed beside Davis as if nothing had happened. Davis didn't flinch. He pretended to stir in his sleep, mumbling something incoherent. Sarah sighed softly and closed her eyes. Her secret safe. For now. But cracks were beginning to show. At breakfast the next morning, their eldest son asked innocently, "Mom, why weren't you home last night? I thought you said you'd read me a story." Sarah froze for half a second before recovering with a laugh. "Oh, sweetheart, I told you I had a meeting. I'll read you 2 stories tonight to make up for it." Davis caught the way her eyes flickered toward him, searching for a sign of suspicion. He gave her none. Instead, he smiled at the kids and carried on the conversation. But inside, his resolve grew harder. He noticed other things too. Her sudden interest in new clothes, her phone never leaving her side, her laughter when texting late at night. She was drifting further from their life together, further from the home they'd built. And Davis let her drift. He let her believe she was untouchable. He let her dance on the edge of ruin without knowing the ground beneath her was already breaking. Sarah thought she was living 2 lives. She didn't realize one of them was already burning to ash. By the 3rd month of Andrew's investigation, Sarah's double life was unraveling faster than even Davis anticipated. What had begun as secret meetings and hushed phone calls was now escalating into recklessness. She stayed out longer. She returned home smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't Davis's. She told lies with less care, as if convinced Davis would never doubt her. But he doubted. He knew. And every detail Andrew uncovered only added fuel to the fire Davis was carefully building. One Thursday evening, Davis was helping their daughter with her math homework when Sarah emerged from the bedroom in a black dress he had never seen before. She looked radiant, glowing even, but her eyes wouldn't meet his. "Book club night," she said casually, grabbing her purse. Davis raised an eyebrow but kept his voice steady. "That the new dress for book club?" Sarah laughed, a little too quickly. "Oh, you know me. Just wanted to look nice." She kissed him on the cheek and left. Minutes later, Davis's phone buzzed. A message from Andrew. Photo. Sarah, arm in arm with Daniel, stepping into a downtown restaurant, her laughter frozen mid-frame. Davis stared at the picture, his heart no longer breaking but hardening into stone. He had learned to master the rage, to let it sharpen into focus. That night, while Sarah slept beside him, he quietly went through her purse. Tucked in the side pocket was a receipt from the very restaurant Andrew had photographed. 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine, a dessert for 2. Paid in cash. It wasn't the receipt that hit him hardest. It was the effort she put into covering her tracks. Sarah wasn't careless, she was deliberate. She was planning a future without him, and he knew it. The following week, Andrew's reports turned darker. Sarah had not only been spending nights with Daniel but had visited a realtor's office with him. Together they were shown pictures of homes, small suburban houses not far from the city. Sarah had smiled as she walked through the model home, her hand brushing Daniel's arm as though she belonged there with him. When Andrew told Davis this, he felt the final thread of patience snap. She wasn't just cheating, she was plotting to replace him entirely. That night, Davis sat alone in the kitchen long after everyone had gone to bed. The silence of the house pressed in on him. The refrigerator hummed faintly, the clock ticked steadily, and in the stillness he realized the truth. Sarah wasn't coming back to him. Not really. She had already left in her heart. But if she thought she would take the children, the house, or his dignity with her, she was gravely mistaken. Davis leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling, and whispered to himself, "She thinks she's writing her story, but I'll be the one to end it." From that moment, the game changed. Davis no longer simply wanted the truth. He wanted justice. And Sarah, unaware of the storm brewing under her own roof, continued to live as if she was untouchable. The silence in the house grew heavier with each passing day. To Sarah, everything seemed normal. Davis was still the calm, steady husband she thought she could manipulate. But beneath his composure, Davis was moving pieces like a chess master setting up checkmate. It began subtly. One Saturday morning, while Sarah took the kids to the park, Davis changed the locks on the house. He told himself it was for safety, should she ask, but in truth it was preparation. He didn't want her waltzing back into the home once the truth came out. Next, he finalized arrangements with his lawyer. Custody papers were drafted, backed by Andrew's airtight evidence. Hotel receipts, photographs, time-stamped videos, even voice recordings from calls Andrew had intercepted. It was all there. A devastating file that painted Sarah not as a loving mother, but as a reckless woman jeopardizing her family. When Davis saw the documents neatly stacked in a folder with his name, he felt a strange calm wash over him. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was the certainty that her lies would not win. Meanwhile, Sarah was growing careless. That very evening, she came home late, her hair disheveled, perfume clinging to her skin in a way that didn't belong to their bedroom. Davis waited at the kitchen table, sipping tea, watching her fumble for excuses. "Sorry," she said with a quick smile. "Traffic was insane, you know how Fridays are." Davis studied her for a moment, then smiled back. "Of course. I know how Fridays are." She exhaled in relief, not realizing that every word, every excuse, was just another brick in the wall closing around her. The turning point came a week later. Andrew sent Davis a video clip, Sarah and Daniel entering a hotel room together, hand in hand. Hours later, they emerged, Daniel's arm wrapped around her waist, as though she were his wife. Davis watched the footage in silence. Then he forwarded it directly to his lawyer. The next day, he emptied their joint savings account into his private one. He wasn't going to let Sarah use their hard-earned money to build her fantasy life with another man. By now, Davis wasn't just preparing for confrontation. He was preparing for war. And Sarah continued her charade. She laughed at the dinner table, kissed him goodnight, played the role of devoted wife with chilling confidence. If she noticed that Davis had grown quieter, she assumed it was stress from work. She didn't see the trap closing in. Late one night, Davis stood in the hallway, watching her sleep. She looked peaceful, almost innocent, her chest rising and falling with each breath. For a fleeting second, memories of their love washed over him, the woman he had fallen for, the vows they once exchanged, the life they had built. But then he remembered the message, the photos, the lies. The woman lying in that bed was not his wife anymore. She was a stranger wearing his wife's face. And soon, she would be exposed. The day of reckoning came on a gray Sunday afternoon. The children were at Davis's sister's house for the weekend, giving him the space he needed for what was about to unfold. Sarah left that morning dressed casually, saying she was meeting Sandra for brunch. Davis kissed her cheek, nodded, and watched her drive away. He knew where she was truly headed. Andrew had already sent him the location, another rendezvous with Daniel at the hotel downtown. Hours later, Davis changed the locks on the front and back doors, leaving only his key functional. He sat in the living room, the folder of evidence spread neatly on the coffee table, waiting. By evening, Headlights washed across the driveway. Sarah stepped out of the car, her hair slightly tousled, her blouse half unbuttoned, a smile still playing on her lips from whatever Daniel had whispered to her before she left. She walked up the steps casually, unlocked the door, and froze. The key wouldn't turn. Confusion flickered across her face. She tried again, jiggling the lock. Nothing. Her smile faded. She knocked lightly, then harder. "Davis? Honey, are you home?" Davis rose slowly, walked to the door and opened it just wide enough to meet her eyes. His face was calm, almost too calm. "Why won't my key work?" Sarah asked, her voice tinged with forced lightness. "Because this isn't your home anymore," Davis said evenly. The words hit her like a slap. She blinked rapidly, trying to process. "What are you talking about? Stop joking, let me in." Davis opened the door wider, revealing the coffee table behind him, the photographs, the receipts, the recordings, all laid out like a courtroom exhibit. Her breath caught. Color drained from her face. "You," she stammered, her eyes darting to the evidence. "You went through my things." "No." Davis cut her off, his voice sharp but steady. "I hired someone. A private investigator. He followed you. He documented everything. Every hotel, every dinner, every lie." Sarah's lips parted in shock, her eyes wide as the weight of his words sank in. She reached for the doorframe to steady herself. "Davis, please, it's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," he said, his tone rising for the first time. "While I worked myself to the bone to give you and our children a life, you were out there building another one. With him." Tears welled in her eyes. She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a whisper. "I never wanted to hurt you. I needed more. I felt invisible, forgotten." Davis's jaw tightened. "You didn't feel invisible when you smiled at him the way you used to smile at me. You didn't feel forgotten when you planned a future behind my back." Her tears spilled over. "Please, Davis, we can fix this. For the kids." "The kids," Davis snapped, cutting her off again. "You think the court will side with you after seeing all this? After watching you throw away your family for a man who will leave you the moment things get hard?" Silence. Sarah's shoulders shook as she realized the truth. Daniel had been a thrill, an escape, but Davis had the power. The locks had changed. The children were no longer hers to take. The life she had built on lies was collapsing in front of her eyes. Davis stepped aside, his voice cold as steel. "Gather your things, then leave. This marriage is over." The following weeks unfolded like a storm Sarah couldn't outrun. Davis moved swiftly, armed with Andrew's evidence and his lawyer's guidance. Court papers were filed, custody arrangements requested, financial records submitted. It was no longer just betrayal, it was a legal battle, and Davis had prepared every weapon. Sarah, once confident in her secret world, now stood exposed. In court, Davis's lawyer presented the photos, the videos, the phone records. Judges don't deal in emotion, they deal in proof, and the proof was overwhelming. Sarah's pleas fell flat. "It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. I'm still a good mother." But the judge's eyes were cold, the evidence damning. The children were granted to Davis full custody. Sarah was given visitation rights, limited, supervised, stripped of the authority she once wielded in the household. The day of the ruling, Sarah walked out of the courthouse with tears streaking her face, her mascara smudged, her hands trembling. Waiting outside for her was not Daniel, not the man she had risked everything for. He was gone, vanished without a word. The moment her secret world collapsed, so did his interest. She called him, desperate. The phone rang endlessly before going to voicemail. She tried again the next day, and the next. Eventually, the number was disconnected. Daniel had left town, leaving her with nothing but the memory of promises whispered in the dark. Sarah's world shrank to silence. The house she once called home was no longer hers. The laughter of her children no longer echoed around her daily life. Even her friends, once envious of her perfect marriage, distanced themselves from the scandal. Davis, meanwhile, carried the weight of both pain and resolution. He hadn't won in the way people imagine victory. He still woke up some nights, staring at the ceiling, remembering the life he thought he had, the woman he thought he knew. Betrayal doesn't vanish, it lingers like smoke. But when he looked at his children, sleeping peacefully under his roof, he knew he had done what was right. He had protected them. He had reclaimed his dignity. He had shown Sarah that lies don't build homes. They burn them down. One evening, weeks after the final hearing, Sarah showed up at the house. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow, her hands clasped in front of her as if in prayer. "Davis," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't have anyone else. Please. Can we talk?" He stood in the doorway, his children playing in the living room behind him. For a moment he saw the woman he had once loved, the woman he had built a life with. But then he remembered the photos, the messages, the years she had risked for a man who abandoned her. Davis's voice was quiet but firm. "Sarah, I gave you all of me. You chose to throw it away. Now you'll live with that choice." She sobbed, covering her face with her hands. Davis closed the door gently but firmly, sealing the final chapter of their story. Trust is fragile, loyalty is priceless, and betrayal always comes with a cost far greater than anyone imagines. In the end, Sarah lost everything she once thought she controlled. And Davis, though scarred, walked away with the one thing that mattered most: freedom.